And as I promised a month ago on January 20th, 2024, we are going to do something on the 20th of every month leading up to Election Day. And then, of course, the actual day when the next president puts their hand on the Bible, or it could be the same president puts their hand on the Bible once again to take their second term. Well, with me to discuss the polls and everything this month is Mitchell Brown. He's the Director of Political Strategy with Cygnal, Cygnal. Thanks for joining me, Mitchell.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
So your colleague Ryan released a lot of numbers, and it does seem like here in February 20th, I know it's a while away, but immigration is going to play a role here, isn't it?
It's going to be the most important factor deciding this election. It's going to kind of revert back to what we saw in 2016 compared to 2020.
And I know that you were dealing with Vivek's campaign. Can you give us a little insight into that and what you guys were able to accomplish with Vivek?
Yeah, I mean, working with Vivek was an honor. We had a strategy going in. It's an interesting scenario when you're working with a candidate who, uh, prior to getting into the election, obviously had a very low name ID. Not many people in the Republican Party, let alone anywhere, knew who Vivek was at the time. So for us, it was taking a unknown candidate and making him a presence that can be felt on the stage and someone who can actually translate to the polls and kind of strike something there. And we have great pride in what we were able to accomplish there. We outlasted a lot of well-known candidates. So again, it got to a place where we were happy with the performance. Obviously, we knew going against President Trump, like from the start, was a tough uphill climb. But I think Vivek managed to maintain his relationship with Trump and kind of carve out his own path. I think he also helped in bringing a bunch of new style voters to the Republican electorate.
You know, people talk about pollsters, and really they only have about 10-minute segments. But I want to delve in here when a someone running for a campaign taps you guys as their pollster. What goes into that? Like, how do you make the numbers work for the candidate? That's what it is, right?
Well, again, there's two types of things. It's all polling is kind of separated into two facets. You have internal polling, which is not meant for public release, and it's just what the campaign uses to actually go out and try to be effective as a campaign. And it influences their decisions, whether it comes to what their ads look like on TV, what their mail looks like, what their digital looks like. Should they be focusing more on this county or this state or whatever it might be? And then there's public release polling, which is to show that your candidate is starting to make a name for himself or saying, hey, this is a tight race, so we can help with fundraising by publicly releasing data. So it's multifaceted in that, but internally, I mean, all you really care about is having accurate data to inform decisions.
You know, when someone sees the newsletter that you guys send out, it doesn't look Democrat leaning. So do you guys also work on the other side as well, or are you sort of conservative focused?
Yeah, we're only a Republican polling firm. But again, I care about being accurate. We've been rated the number one most accurate private pollster for the past three election cycles by both 538 and the New York Times. I mean, we're not out here to change any data or make it look good for Republicans. And again, our data shows Democrats up, but when we're talking about uh, an election like that, that's on like the popular vote nationwide. Like a dead heat election due to electoral college is actually much more beneficial for Republicans than it is for Democrats.
I feel like we kind of saw that in 2000 with the Gore Bush that went to the Supreme Court. But on the other hand, you know, I feel like a lot of Democrats are swaying to Republicans. Is Signal showing that as well?
Yeah, well, be careful how I word this. It's not that they're moving to Republicans. It's just there's a decent group of your traditional Democrats or your blue dog Dems that are over Biden and a lot of the far left ideology. So they're kind of identifying more as independents now. It's not that there's a group of Democrats that are going out and saying they like Trump now. It's more sentiment against Biden and just a little more move to the centrist style of thought.
Mitchell, in 2020, I felt like it was all about personality. You didn't like his tweets, you didn't like the way he handled the pandemic. But this year, I just feel like it's all about the issues. It's a far cry from what we saw in 2020 when the polling is concerned.
Yeah. Trump is great as a candidate when he's not in office. When he has something to point to, and especially when he's been given the gift of Joe Biden's term, it's a really strong place to be in. When Trump's attacking, telling people like what's going wrong in their lives, that doesn't really work as a campaign style when you're in office. And people in 2020, especially with the pandemic coming through and the George Floyd riots, it was a personality test, and people thought, okay, maybe this is a little too crazy for me. I'm gonna go with what I think I know, who Joe Biden is. People are now regretting that decision, and across the board, people think that their lives are not better today in 2024 than they were in 2020. So it's a bounce
Does
back.
Signal have do you guys have a poll on that? Like how lives were for voting Biden in 2020 compared to now? Did you guys sort of do a poll on that?
Yeah, I mean, it again, the way that we worded it was a little different. Mostly it's asked by people's financial situation. And you're getting close to it's in between 2/3 and 3/4 of voters say that their financial situation has not gotten better or has gotten worse in the past 4 years.
And I know that, inflation has been a hot button issue. Typically in these elections, economy tops everything else. Where does economy rank this year?
Economy is always one that shows up as what voters say is their number one issue, but it doesn't actually determine elections. Uh, it's something everyone thinks about, but what gets people to vote is visceral reactions or their heart. People don't vote with their mind. So Republicans ran on this inflation and an economy message in 22 and it didn't work well. So again, I think we need to touch back in on like what actually drives people. And yes, obviously people care about the economy, but it's not what's deciding their vote. And that's why I think this is coming back to immigration for this election.
Want to ask you about the media intake. Is it any different than 2020? Are people actually not watching a Fox News or CNN? I mean, what are you guys seeing?
Yeah, I mean, it's steadily declining, like the viewership, obviously, of cable broadcast. But Fox and Republican primaries is still what you're going to want to be buying. When it comes to the general, I mean, you're seeing more people that are getting their information via digital ads or streaming service ads. So it's not really necessarily changing how campaigns are going about it. Still, the TV, they're still cutting an ad so it can be on your Hulu or whatever streaming service people are watching, Peacock, whatever it might be. And then they're still going to target sporting events for a lot of their campaigns. That's still going to be the main mode that people are spending in 24, is going to be some sort of video ad. But you're going to see again more text, email across the board while TV dwindles. It's going to find a place where it rests. Like it'll never die off. It's always going to be the number one medium. It's just, I guess, how people are consuming the video.
Here in New York, speaking of ads, all we saw was the Mozzie Phillip ads and the Tom Swazi ads. And got to ask you, is last week an indication of where this general can go, or is that sort of a Democrat talking point that they hope that that's what happens?
I mean, just look at the PVI of that district. Santos drastically overperformed. And when we took a look at this district, Trump wins this district. I mean, it's just Santos had an outlasting effect. And so if you look at this performed to PVI. So I don't think that's really anything people should celebrate. It's having the first time someone's been removed from Congress in decades, kind of poisoned an already heavy D seat. So I don't really think it's like kind of a barrier on anything or a gauge on what's going to happen in November.
I don't think so either. I know that this Long Island is typically red anyway for Trump or any other candidate. All right. Well, I got to ask you this because obviously you mentioned reactionary, and what we saw last couple of weeks with the cops being beat up by the migrants. Have you guys delved into the polling of that? I know you said 50%, 57% do not want illegals here. They want to actually catch them and deport them back. And did that come about because of what happened in Times Square, or is that a general feeling even before that attack happened?
Well, so the number you just referred to is actually 57% of people support putting migrants in detention centers until they're deported. 66% of Americans support deporting illegals. And no, that's just another event that's leading to this. It's been spiking everywhere in the country. Boston, it's happening. It's a daily life thing in Southern California and in Arizona and in Texas. So while that's just one instance that people are seeing and it's changing sentiment, that's happening everywhere. Chicago, I could name a place, DC, where I live. It's impacting everyone. So it wasn't solely related to that, but it's just what sentiment is showing. So, like I said, two-thirds of Americans want to deport illegal migrants, while 56 or 57% want to put them in detention camps until they do so instead of this catch and release that the Biden administration's been doing. We also showed that 60% of Americans support what Governor Greg Abbott is doing in Texas and fighting the federal government and sending his own troops to the border. We also had a number that 51% of Americans would support shutting down the government over the border.
There's so many angles to this election. I want to ask you this. Are New York and DC, Chicago, Boston, your main cities that are pretty blue, are they happy? Are you seeing any trends like, yeah, they're not happy here, they're moving out? Is that still going on?
Yeah, I mean, people who don't want to live there don't live there anymore. It's not going to change the makeup of the cities, like politically. You know what I mean? Like the people who don't want to deal with it move to Florida, move to Tennessee, move to Texas, move to South Carolina. They're not staying there. So you're not going to see any change like in the voting patterns in these cities. Sure, you might have the occasional like surprise and people just realizing how bad this is for their community. So sure, you might see like a DC that's a 91% Democrat vote city. Maybe it goes to 87%, but it's nothing that's going to fundamentally change any of these cities.
I'm there. Sorry, Mitchell. Noah. And I mean, we would hope it would only because we want some more common sense in these cities, but maybe that just won't happen. I don't know. Voting wise, um, when you did the Lee Zeldin, did you guys work on the Lee Zeldin, Kathy Hochul race? What were you seeing there, and why did he come up short? Because I know it was the city, but he made a really good run at that governorship last year.
Yeah, I mean, it shows how strong of a candidate he was. So I mean, yeah, he came up short, but that's a long shot seat for a Republican to win. Him performing that well is a testament to who he is and his strength as a candidate. Also coupled with just a lot of things going against the governor in New York. So that campaign was well done. Again, he's a strong candidate and has a great political future. So again, he outperformed what people thought he could do when he initially got into the race. But it's an uphill battle in New York regardless. Like it's without some seismic shift, that's about as good of a performance you're going to see for a few election cycles there.
Staying here in the state, obviously Trump is continuing to get, hit with all these fines but that's not really affecting his poll numbers, is it?
It's making them better. Um,
I
like
always
it,
say he's collecting indictments and all this as rocket fuel for his presidency. That's what it feels like.
yeah. I mean, I think the way that it seemed like the concerted effort to go against Trump is these indictments, and then to not, if you see like any of the mainstream news, they're choosing to not air his remarks. They're giving like if you looked at like the Iowa caucuses, New Hampshire, they were giving a platform to DeSantis and Haley, but when Trump would speak, they would cut it off and said they didn't want to air it because of disinformation. That's another gift to Trump. It's gotten to the point where people understand just how egregious like the political targeting is, and every more indictment they throw at him, it's going to be better for him, especially when it turns out to just look ridiculous. Like when you have what's going on in Georgia with the prosecutor paying her lover, when you have New York setting a precedent that is insane, and you're going to have, and you had the governor had to literally go out and say to real estate investors and businesses that this was essentially a one-off thing and we won't ever do it again. No one believes any of these things. So again, it's
Oh,
only
it
going
does make, at a time where there's a bunch of for lease spaces in our city, it's a really great time to do this. Means I'm being sarcastic because it just shows it could be done to anybody. And why would anybody want to invest here at a time where we need investing back in New York post pandemic? I'm looking at your stats from this past Thursday polling dump, and I see that there's a big spike, a 13-point spike in voters who plan to vote in person. And I always think since the Democrats wanted to go through with this, Republicans had to sort of adapt and beat them at the mail-in as well. But they're still strong on going on election day.
Yeah, I mean, Republicans always are going to want, for the large part, going to want to vote in person on election day, but Republicans should be actively getting people to vote by mail and to vote early and to ballot harvest. Uh, you can't continuously try to stick to old methods when your opponent is trying new things and trying to gain any little advantage they can. You have to play the same game. So, like I said, again, Republicans need to be ballot harvesting. They need to be telling voters that voting early is fine and voting by mail is fine. Again, we need that vote turnout and as many people voting just as much as they do.
This pollster pack, this stat pack is filled with different things. We're going to link it on our description in the podcast below. But I'm seeing now independents now, the GOP has gained some, but now they've lost a little bit. Where do the independents land, do you think, come November of this year?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's the $1 million question right there. And I think it varies by what the independent looks like and what state they live in. Um, why why I say like the economy is not an effective message to run on, or why it's not something that actually decides a vote, is so when people talk about like the swing voters and independents, like you often hear the refrain about suburban women. Um, And so one thing I want to touch on there is like just by income. So say you're looking at like the Philadelphia suburbs, the main line, um, very high income earning areas. So for them, the inflation economy message doesn't work. Why they didn't turn out for Republicans in 22 or 20 was abortion. So for them, when it doesn't matter how much uh, eggs are or how much gas is, like they don't second look at something. They just go in and buy what they need. And sure, they might overall notice a price difference, but it's not affecting their day-to-day decisions. They are going to be more concerned with abortion and issues like that. When you go look at Michigan and Wisconsin, where voters tend to feel the brunt of this inflation higher, and again, have felt it for a decade now, just again with the loss of job and kind of destruction of their community, those independents are going to lean right. So it's looking at it based on education and income. Again, the parties have had a monumental shift in the past 2 decades. Republicans are no longer the party of the country club. It's the party of the blue collar working class voter. Income and education are now the number one determinant of someone's vote. The more educated and more income you earn, the more likely you are to vote Dem.
I think union guys are going to vote Republican. I mean, we've seen Trump go to the UAW, and by the way, he did a better job of that than Biden did. I don't know if you were following that or not, but when he was at the UAW, he rocked the place. Biden was sort of half there, half not, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, union leadership's going to endorse Biden, but there's going to be very large breaks in every union with the average voter going out and voting for Trump. And why Trump is unique is those voters wouldn't break and go vote for a Nikki Haley. They would only go do that for Trump. And these were the voters who either they haven't voted before or never voted Republican, and that's why Trump swung the Rust Belt in 16.
I want to ask you about Vivek. The wheelhouse for him was which demographic and what was his weak spot that you guys found?
Yeah. So for him, obviously, it's a base that was very Trumpian and America first, but a younger version. So like a under 35 America First Republican was really receptive to Vivek. Now, there was even a lot of people who were like still Trump voters that were supportive of Vivek. So like if Trump wasn't there, Vivek would be their style of politician. And then the people who did support Vivek almost universally went to Trump. So again, it's a younger America First voter was where he did well, and he obviously where he fell behind obviously was the group that we knew he would fall behind in, and it's that traditional neocon older conservative.
Well, he sort of, I don't know who scripted him or went off script sometimes, but he was giving it to Haley on the debate stage, and Nikki Haley's still there. So if you were to consult her right now, would you kindly tell her to leave the race? I mean, is it, well, what's she trying to prove by staying in? Just out of curiosity.
Uh, that's a good question. I mean, this was never a race to begin with. The only state or territory that she would have a chance of winning is the District of Columbia in a Republican primary because all the consultants and establishment like her. Outside of that, she'd lose all 50 states. She's gonna lose her home state if this announcement she has today isn't her dropping out. She's gonna again get destroyed in her home state. What she's doing is placating to the donors who are there, and campaigns are a way to maintain a lifestyle and maintain relevancy. And there's a whole campaign staff behind her, so they're selling a dream of the Never Trump group. So there is that sliver of the Republican Party, and that's still what she's playing to. But I think if you asked her or anyone in her team if they thought this was still a race, they'd be lying to you if they said it was.
But right, not Haley's team won't publicly say that, but I'm sure behind closed doors they do. All right, so you guys are pollsters and you've worked with guys like Vivek Ramaswamy, candidates like Vivek Ramaswamy. Do you advise them on how to be on that debate stage, or is that a totally different team?
Uh, I mean, it varies by candidate. Like I said, I mean, we were pollsters for Trump in 2020. I mean, we do a bunch of congressional, a bunch of senatorial races. Everyone changes. I mean, it depends what input they want. We talk about what should be talked about on there, but we're not doing debate prep with the candidates. We're not their general consultant or campaign manager. We're just saying, hey, these are the kind of the messages and the issues that are top of mind for voters right now. But outside of that, we're not like giving advice on how to act or what to say in debates.
Gotta ask you, being a pollster for Trump, did you work with him directly? And did you guys ever feel pressure? Like you got to get him the right numbers because he can fly off the handle a little bit if one information is wrong.
Yeah, so I was actually working for Trump at the White House when Cygnal was polling for Trump. So I was on the other side of this, and I was on the Trump victory campaign. So I had my interactions with him there. I wasn't at Cygnal for it, but Cygnal again delivered good data for the Trump admin and for the Trump campaign in those last days. But yeah, I mean, Trump. It's hard because again you want to show him like where he's doing well and where he's not. It's just I mean he wants to see good data, but he wants to see accurate data. So it's just making sure that what you're delivering him is right and just being there to give the honest data when sometimes it's not what you want to hear.
Yeah, I can only imagine the pressures of that. Mitch, this has been awesome. I gotta ask you, how do you get the numbers? Do you email your those that you poll? Do you call up people to poll? How do you guys get your numbers?
Yeah, so kind of what makes Signal unique and why we had like a rapid rise to where we are today is we don't care how we contact voters. So we kind of revolutionize multimodal polling. So we will do live calls, recorded calls to cell phones, to landlines. We'll send texts. We'll do online panel. Whatever we have to do to contact the right voters so that we don't have to wait our polling as much. That's all that matters to us. So it could be any of the methods I just said. But again, what matters to us is that say we have a sample and the sample says that for an accurate voter universe, the demographics say we need 35 Hispanic women under the age of 50. We're going to use all those methods until we get that many responses from Hispanic women under the age of 50. We're not going to just fill a sample, only get 27 responses, and then wait the rest of it.
So to kind of put a bow on this edition, two things. Where do we stand with Trump v. Biden? What's the numbers that Cygnal is showing? And why, you said earlier, but just say it again, why people should trust Cygnal for their data of this whole election cycle.
Yeah, I mean, on why to trust Cygnal, don't take my word on it. Go look us up. And like I said, we've been rated the number one most accurate private pollster the past three election cycles. And it's what we stake our brand on. We're the youngest group of pollsters on the Republican side, but have made our name on accuracy. And when it comes to Trump Biden, like I said, obviously we know Trump's not winning the popular vote. When it comes down to it, it's what happens in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Arizona. And from where I'm seeing it, I think if Trump takes 2 to 3 of those 5 states that swung towards Biden in 2020, and that delivers him the 2024 election. And again, I think why it's a benefit to actually have Trump and why what other Republicans are saying that like Nikki Haley's a better general election candidate, I don't believe to be true. Because while yes, she would maybe outperform Trump in Georgia, she is definitely not outperforming Trump or even coming close to securing wins in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, or Michigan, and that's where I believe Trump can.
We'll have to see. I feel like this summer there's going to be a change on the Democratic side that might shift everything. I don't know. We'll have to see. But that's just my own thought. We can weigh in later in the year if you like, Mitchell, as the polls increase, get heated up even more, toward the summer. Would love to have you back.
Yeah, anytime, Alex. It was great talking to you.
That was Mitchell Brown, the National Director of Political Strategy for Cygnal on the Alex Garrett Podcast Network. That was perfect. I think we got everything we wanted to cover there. Did you want to cover anything else, or did we touch everything?
No, I think that was a good kind of